Hi, welcome to Front Porch Conversations here on the Front Porch at the Copeland Community Center. And in addition to our guests, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute, we have guests outside as well. You can probably hear the birds in the background. We've been hearing an owl. So we have all kind of entertainment today. I want to thank you all for coming. This is David and Karen Hall, and they are fairly new to the village, but they'll tell us about that. And you live in Riverwoods on the Wildwood Circle, correct? Well, thank you for agreeing to come and sit down on the porch with me.
Well, thank you for having us.
It's good to be here.
David mentioned to me yesterday that he didn't have an accent. So, David, where were you born that you didn't get an accent from?
Well, we were both born in Welch, West Virginia, back in the 50s. In Welch, West Virginia at that time is the county seat of McDowell County, West Virginia. And that was kind of the heart of the West Virginia southern coal fields at that time. So, at that time, McDowell County had about 100,000 residents. Today it has less than 20,000. So we've seen a big decline in the coal fields there in West Virginia. But when we were born, there were 3 hospitals in the county seat. John Kennedy came through, and when he was running for president, it was a big spot to stop for folks. But it was quite the booming little city back when we were born there. So
now, is that a real mountainous part of West Virginia?
It is. It's very mountainous, and it's every little town you went in had a coal mine, had its own school. Usually there was a high school that served 2 or 3 towns, but it's very, very mountainous.
The coal camps each had their own school, their own store, all of those kinds of things. And then you would go down and there would be another small coal camp with identical houses painted different colors. And everybody just lived in that neighborhood and took care of each other, and you went out to play, and when you went out to play, you had to stay within the sound of your mom's voice, and every adult was in charge. So if you were told to do something by whomever, you did whatever they said. That was the way we grew up.
Yeah, it was quite the melting pot too, because the coal fields brought in European immigrants. We had Hungarians and Italians and Yugoslavians, and so you went outside in the summertime, you could smell 50 different dishes cooking from all over the place. So it was very much a cross culture. It was a fun place to grow up.
Were you there because of the coal mines, or had your families lived in that area before the coal mines started?
Yes, I actually worked in the coal mines for several years, but I was a 3rd generation coal miner. My grandfather I never met was actually killed in a coal mine explosion in the late 30s, and then my father, after World War II, he served and he went into the coal industry also, and a few years later I followed him in. So I think that's what brought all the families there, was the coal industry. And again, back that time they needed thousands of men because there was a lot of manual labor, but that's why the population was so great.
And my dad worked for U.S. Steel in the warehouse there, and was also an Advent Christian pastor. He was bivocational. So we would live there during the week and then drove to the adjoining county, only 30 miles, but an hour and a half away across the mountains, where he started the Advent Christian Church there in Princeton, and we were there back and forth until we moved to Princeton when I was going in the 4th grade. But we didn't know each other at that point. That was later. By way of Florida, David's family, like all the other families in McDowell County, either moved to Florida or Michigan. That was what we did when the coal mines started laying off. And then he moved back to Princeton, and we were neighbors. And he tells everyone we dated because he didn't have a car and he could walk to my house.
Is that what you say? That is what you say.
That's
right?
why I said our dad paid me, because I was close by and he knew I didn't have a car, so he could keep an eye on us. So.
And we went to church
together. The reason I started going to church there, we moved right up the street from the church and the parsonage, and her father came to visit us, invited us to church, and he brought her with us. So I started going to youth group, and we started talking over a couple of years and then started dating. So that's how I got involved with the church.
Well, you were talking about growing up, and everybody was your parent. Every adult was your parent, or had responsibility, or could discipline you probably.
Right.
What are some of your other fond memories of growing up?
You played outside the entire day. You got up and had your few chores, because I was still pretty young. And then you went outside, and you would run in and grab something for lunch and run back out. So you were there all the time. There were so many kids that there was always something going on. You could roller skate down the sidewalk, or you could be playing house, or you could whatever. There was always a group of kids that were ready and willing to be playing. And everyone did watch out for each other. You knew everyone in each house as you went by. So that was, I remember coming in at night, you were so dirty from being out and being around the coal, the trains going through and the smoke, all of that. Being so dirty, the bathtub had to be scrubbed very diligently after you finished cleaning up at night. So it was a good childhood.
And mine would be very similar. Again, in the summer, you could go outside and immediately you could have two baseball teams. You could play baseball. We would ride. You could get a group together and ride bicycles all day, or we'd go play in the woods. And wintertime, you could take your sled and you'd stay out all day. And you'd come in, your boots would be froze to your pants where you would be sleigh riding all day. And even the coal miners were helpful. They would help you build a bonfire so you could stay warm while you were sleigh riding. So it was very much a small community where everybody kind of watched out for each other. But a lot of friends.
And did you attend high school together?
We did.
We did. Well, I moved to Princeton when I was in the 8th grade, and again I rode the same bus to school, and so we go. I think Chuck and Peggy said that was their first sweetheart. She was my first sweetheart. Our first date, we went to Love Story, and I tell folks it's been one ever since. So.
That was one of the quiz questions on Jeopardy last night. About the famous line.
Love means you never have to say you're sorry.
Right.
A stupid line.
Yes.
But yes.
And that was the title of the category, stupid line.
Okay.
We should have watched it.
Yeah.
After high school, what did you do?
Well, we started attending a Concord College together. I was a year older, but I went first. We actually got married. Karen was 19 and I was almost 21. But I tell folks, she was very ambitious. She graduated high school and she was 17. Went immediately into college and went year round. So she graduated in three years. Had her master's degree when she was 21. So I tell folks she was already a junior in college when we got married. I always wanted to be a forest ranger and was in pre-forestry, but my parents were divorced and my mom kind of struggled. So when it came time to transfer, I just didn't have the money to go on to the bigger school. So I took about 6 months off and ended up transferring to another local school and got an associate's degree in electrical engineering technology. And we got married on a Wednesday and I went to work in the coal mines on Monday morning. The next Monday.
New Year's Day.
Yeah, we got married on New Year's Day.
Because that was semester break.
So I actually worked as a coal miner and went to school at the same time for 2 years. And then when I graduated, I went to work for a company that manufactured coal mine equipment with my degree. So I traveled all over the coal fields that time representing a manufacturer. And Karen was a teacher, so you can...
I was the first person to graduate from Concord with a degree in special ed. That's what I had always wanted to do. And I was involved in education for 37 years. I taught and then worked with parents and did testing, identification of kids, and then spent the last several years in administration as special ed director and in charge of staff development, those types of things. So my career, I changed locations, whatever, but I was always involved in education. David took a drastic change in career in '82 when he got laid off. So,
Yeah, again, coal industry has always been very cyclical, up and down. But in '82, as Reagan was president, and we had a big recession, and at that time there was a lot of unrest in the coal industry, a lot of strikes and things. And I'm not sure what happened, but like U.S. Steel shut down their entire operations in West Virginia. Like 5,000 men lost their job in one day, and then all the other coal companies followed. So probably in the course of just 6 months, 50,000 men lost their jobs in West Virginia. So I worked for Ingersoll Rand, and they had a coal mine equipment division. They sold off the coal mine division, so I was laid off. Karen was 6 months pregnant with our second child. We had just been in a new home for about 3 years. So we thought about moving, but she had insurance and had a good job, so I actually went to the local hospital to see. I had a friend of mine who worked in personnel and said if I could get a job working in maintenance, and she said there's no openings and these guys stay here for forever. So she said, if you'd like to become a nurse, we'll actually help pay your tuition if you want to go to school. And I'd actually done some work with some headhunters about what would be a good field to go into after being laid off, and I said, yeah, I think I'll give it a try. So I went to school for 2 years and became a nurse. And much like her, I started out working in the emergency room and ICU, and then it's amazing how some of the technology in the healthcare is the same as in the coal industry. It's just different applications. So I got interested in patient safety and quality management and got into the management side of healthcare and worked for the next 30 years trying to improve patient safety, working in risk management and mitigation, worked with the lawyers when we had lawsuits and such. And hospitals are accredited by an agency called the Joint Commission. So I think I coordinated about 9 different Joint Commission surveys over the years and got to be pretty good at it. And that's one of the things when I moved here, I was quite impressed that when we went down to the clinic, I've not met Carrie, I think she's over the clinics, but I saw that all those, the clinic and nursing homes are Joint Commission accredited. And I was quite impressed because I know what effort that takes to be accredited for those organizations.
Most nursing homes couldn't do that.
Yeah.
So.
And I also I worked with a Medicare Quality Improvement Organization when I worked for a small health system out of Roanoke, Virginia. They had like 9 hospitals. So when I got to be 55, you could do early retirement, and the Quality Improvement Organization for Virginia and Maryland convinced me to retire and go to work for them. So I spent about 8 years working with hospitals, nursing homes, and physicians' offices across the state of Virginia, trying to help them in their patient safety efforts and quality improvement. So, and retired in 2017, finally.
You talked about having your second child, expecting your second child. Tell us about your children.
We have 2 children. Allison is the oldest. She and her husband live in Jacksonville, Florida. She is a palliative care social worker and works at Shands Hospital there in the palliative care area. They have 2 perfect children, Natalie and Micah. Our son, DJ, who was born right after David was laid off, and he stayed home and became Mr. Mom to a 3-year-old and an infant until he went back to school a few years later. DJ is a physician at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. He and his wife have 2 perfect children as well, Anna Lee and Morgan. Our son-in-law is Chris Hall, who is Frank and Candy Hall's son, which has made things interesting here with the Halls. He's the pastor of the West Jacks Advent Christian Church. And our daughter-in-law, Sarah, is a speech therapist and works from home with the kids. So we have two kids and 4 grandchildren.
And 4 perfect grandchildren, right?
4 perfect grandchildren. Our children were not perfect. The grandchildren have just changed all of them.
And again, people get quite confused with the Frank Hall and the Candy Hall, but our daughter met Chris Hall at the Blowing Rock Campground during summer camp years ago. I said she didn't marry her first cousin from West Virginia. He's from Georgia and she's from West Virginia, but right. They met at camp and got together several years later. But it does cause confusion at times.
Yes.
I can imagine. I grew up in the county I grew up in had a lot of families named Hall, and if you weren't related to them, you couldn't even keep up with who was who.
Well, we're having trouble. We surely are.
When you had lived in the West Virginia area all your adult life until coming this way?
We did. We moved here in August of 19. We had taken care of our parents until they died. My dad died in August of 18. And we looked around and realized we had no family left there. And I'll let David take over the rest of that part of the story then.
But her dad had he called it the farm. It was like 20 acres, and we had both developed some chronic health problems. And I looked around, it's like, I can't take care of this 2-story house and 20 acres. And again, our children were gone, and so we decided that we would look around for a home. So we looked at retirement places in Minnesota, and it's too cold up there most of the time. It's beautiful there in the summertime, but I got on the line and did searches all around Jacksonville. I found out very quickly that we couldn't afford anything at Jack's Beach. It was very nice there, but it's like that's beyond our budget. But every time I had to do a search, at the bottom, Advent Christian Village would come up as a retirement village, and I skimmed over it for 4 or 5 times, and finally I said, I will click on that. And I clicked on it, and I said, Karen had been here several times. I was always working, but she had been down with our youth group doing work projects and stuff and had been here. So we decided, I clicked on it and said it has health care, there's a church there. She always wanted to go somewhere where we could be around the Advent Christian Church because of our heritage. I said it kind of has everything that we need. So we made an appointment with Karen Thomas and came down and looked around, and we're quite impressed when we got here with it's a little community within itself. So it met our needs. It's close enough to our daughter that she don't feel like she has to take care of us each day, but if we needed something or she needed something, we could be there. And until this pandemic hit, our goal was to spend the majority of the summer in Minnesota with our son, but that's to be determined yet. But we have been very pleased thus far with being here. We lived in our same house for 40 years and we had never taken our big adventure, so we retired to take our big adventure.
Well, I'm glad it led you here.
But we are enjoying it very much.
And all of us have had to make a few changes during this pandemic.
Yes.
What we thought were our plans are not.
Right.
And the entire world has been affected.
Exactly.
Yes.
I know that you both grew up going to church. Do you have a particular moment in your life or a special memory of when that really became real and personal to you, your faith?
Well, growing up a preacher's kid, you were in church all the time. And your vacations consisted of him going somewhere and preaching revival. And contrary to popular opinion, that's not most children's dream vacation. I was 10 when I was saved and baptized. Your turn.
I was older. I think I was a junior in high school. Again, I started going to church there. And it's funny, some of the folks, back then they were called Youth and Focus teams, I think. Roland Griswold brought teams around, and they came to Princeton.
Millie's husband.
Millie's husband. But Ed Neal, I think some folks know him. Sam Warren, who's over in Jacksonville, he was on that team. But they kind of they came and spent a couple of weeks in Princeton and spent a lot of time with them and talking about things. And then about a month later, I went to a little local youth revival in Princeton and accepted the Lord, and her dad baptized me. But again, growing up, our kids, we got up and there was no doubt was expected. We're all going to church on Sunday morning. We didn't make him go. It's like it was the expectation, and they went to summer camps, and I think they got a good foundation. But again, the church in Princeton, my parents were divorced. There were a lot of men there who kind of mentored me and took me under their wing and took me on fishing trips and hunting trips. So it was I guess it was just seeing Christian men. Had a big impact on me.
Yeah. And what do both of you like to do in your retirement life now?
I would read 24/7, which is not the healthiest thing to do, but I do love to read. I'm very involved in WHFMS, which there's 2 organizations here at the church in that. I'm
Would you tell our
actually,
viewers what that stands for?
it's the Women's Home and Foreign Mission Society. It's an organization that's existed almost as long as the denomination. Currently, I'm the national president of it. It has such an important role, and we do so much as groups for missionaries and for missions and those things. I really enjoy just being with the women. And that's the other aspect. It's not just the mission aspect, it's the fellowship and whatever. Moving here changed it totally because I went from being with a wonderful group in Princeton to moving here, being with a wonderful group, but they were all either former missionaries or their children are missionaries. So it was very much more of a personal involvement here. I do enjoy being involved in that. And I volunteer when we can at the archives and also at the Copeland Clinic. I love meeting people and probably spend way too much time on Facebook before he says that. Now it's his turn.
Again, unfortunately, we were both in our careers. We worked about 60 hours a week, so between that and taking your kids to ball practice, I didn't do a lot. I've started playing some golf since I've retired, and I tell folks I have a set of clubs. I'm not really a golfer, but I enjoy that. I have a lot of friends that I have met through the years I'm trying to get reacquainted with. I have a friend who has a lake house in Virginia. I love to go and fish with him. I used to backpack a lot. I like to do that. Again, we both deferred a lot of health issues. So our second night here, I ended up in your local ER and then ended up over at the Mayo Clinic and have had a procedure. So we've got to get some tune-up done before. And I was decided I was going to give myself a year before I tried to find something to volunteer in. Still got to get the house totally. I got some boxes to finish up and build some shelves, but just going to take it slow for a while. And then again, I just like to reconnect with people I have met through the years and like to get back and do some things with them.
So that kind of sounds like things on your bucket list too, which was one of our other questions we talked about. Anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Well, I would love to fish the Boundary Waters one more time, and it's on the border of Minnesota and Canada. You have to go by canoe, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and the fishing is fantastic. And
we've always wanted to do an Alaskan cruise, and
that's one thing I would hardly recommend. I would do another one tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow.
I understand. Yes.
And again, just spending time with the grandkids. I like to get to know them and spend time in Minnesota and spend more time in Jacksonville. But just enjoying life.
What advice would each of you give a young child or a young person now?
Whoa.
It might sound cliche, but I would say honor your father and mother. You know, my daughter told me several times now, you're not as dumb as you used to be. The older I get, the older she gets. She says maybe you were right, but to just it's difficult teenage years, but try to establish a relationship with your kids and be there for them, and through that I think develop a bond. Again, we all reach times when teenage years are tough and you go apart, but if you build those bonds, I think it all comes back together, and then you can really enjoy your latter years with your kids and your grandkids. So,
I think sometimes now, how can my children be that old?
Exactly.
I don't think I've gotten that much older, but they have. But it's a revelation to see us have to be able to be adults together.
Yeah.
And
It is.
this year, I think that was really a revelation to you. It sounded like when your daughter said that.
When you're with kids or teenagers or whatever, and they're kind of in the middle of struggles. And everybody does that as they're growing up. I started praying Philippians 1:9 and 9, 10, 11. You kind of move on through. And I think that's always my prayer for kids when I watch them struggle. And it starts out with Paul saying, and this is my prayer, that your love for God will increase more and more in knowledge and depth of insight. And then it goes on, and I think that's my prayer and my hope for kids.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you both for joining us on the front porch today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for joining and watching, and those of you watching, and we hope you'll come back and visit with us again.